Let's try it again.
What episode is this? 9?
Yes. Upside down. 6, 6, 6, 6. All right, well then, I guess welcome to episode 9.
Yep. Welcome.
Of Anti-Social Murder Club. We're back in a timely manner this time. Kinda, right? Yeah.
Kind of. We're trying to get back on this Saturday schedule, as we say almost every week, but yeah, you know.
Look, whatever.
It's the summertime. Summer.
Anything exciting this week, Nia, before we get started with our heinous crimes?
I feel like I had a story that I wanted to tell you guys, but
you forgot?
I don't remember, no?
Yep, it happens.
I really don't. I think we're a little bit checked out. We have been doing research since, 10 this morning?
Yep.
It is now 5:19 in the afternoon.
And I feel like I didn't learn about anything.
You don't?
I just, I think I zoned out way too much.
Oh my God. There is something I did want to tell you guys. So, this weekend, the Klansmen are in town.
And it's this weekend?
Yeah, it's this weekend. So they're here. There's like a bunch of roads cut off and stuff like that. I think the actual rally is tomorrow.
Well, staying home tomorrow.
Well, I'm not going.
I ain't coming out.
But they was telling people to just don't go nowhere the whole week. The whole weekend.
Excuse me?
I mean, I'm not trying to go get lynched.
But why should we conform to these motherfuckers coming here?
Precisely.
Why don't y'all just do a web conference or something?
So, Myra's Boo thing has a theory that the reason why that they're protesting in front of the White House is so that if anything pop off, they have the White House security. As opposed to what happened when they were in Charlottesville last year.
But do we really think the White House is going to give a fuck about them? I feel like the White House is just going to secure their people, and it's like, well...
I don't know. I mean, I feel like if the retaliation is bad enough, they may take it as a threat to their people, especially because most of these people that are rallying together,
I bet 45 is going to be right there.
Precisely, that's what I was saying. They claim him as the big honcho. But anyway, this week we are diving into some cases from down south,
which I guess kind of meshes well with what's happening today, because what we just saw.
Watching these documentaries.
Just a bunch of racist people.
Yes. Ignorant. Basically, the best way to put it, they look like a bunch of hillbillies. Overalls and all.
Yup. Thick ass accent. I just told Nia, I feel like I'm going to talk in a southern accent here.
The whole day?
The whole day. It's the scariest accent of all, honestly.
Yeah, it terrifies me too.
Can you imagine messing with a dude from down south?
No.
I can't even.
Well, I've dated guys from the south, but they're usually black.
Just heard?
No, it's actually a turn off. Your accent don't need to be that heavy.
That's what I'm saying.
Nope.
Okay, so my case today. Oh, did we say who we are? Do y'all know us? Are we?
I guess if y'all don't know who we are by now,
get it together.
My name is Nia.
My name is Myra. And this is Anti-Social Murder Club.
If you ain't know that already.
For the third time that I've said it this time.
Welcome.
Okay. So my case is the infamous case of the West Memphis Three, which if y'all are into true crime, y'all should already know. I remember learning about this when I was way too young to learn about this, but I didn't see all of the documentaries we saw today. I saw a different one. Mm-hmm. And me and my mom saw it. Shout out to mommy. Me and her watched all these things together.
I feel like the documentary we watched were 3 hours each.
They were. They was 2.5 hours.
Oh my God. This is why we're so selective.
Exactly.
All we've been doing is eating and research since
and drinking for me.
Yeah. I only drink water.
But this case is kind of everywhere. I tried my best, but look, it's been a long ass work week, and I had to do this in between work, in between home and trying to sleep and shower and do my daily things.
You mean you didn't skip showering?
Look, I love y'all, but not that one. So, if you feel like I missed anything, just go ahead and watch. It's called Paradise Lost, and then Paradise Lost Redemption, and then Paradise Lost 3 something. There's 3 documentaries. They're HBO documentaries. They're very good. They go in depth. So if you feel like you missed something, if I confused you, just go watch that. This is just a little summary.
Please note that they are very graphic.
Oh, very graphic.
So if
like,
you don't like seeing pictures
of little dead boys' bodies and close-ups of the bodies and
rigor mortis.
Rigor mortis. Yeah, don't. And like very detailed explanations as to what happened, what could have happened. Like it's just like a lot going on.
Yep.
All right. So this took place in 1993, May of 1993. So shout out 93 babies. My birthday's in a week. In exactly a week. Damn, son.
You old, bruh.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 25. Quarter of a century.
Let me shut up. I am 31.
All right, so this was in 93. I was yet to be born. Mm-hmm. So on the evening of May 5th, 1993, 8-year-olds Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers were reported missing by Christopher Byers' adoptive father around 7 p.m. The boys were last seen together by neighbors at around 6:30 p.m. when Steve Branch's stepfather, Terry Hobbs, called for them to come home. Now, Chris Byers' adoptive father will come into play later, as well as Terry Hobbs, so watch out for their names.
So were they having to sleep over or something? Like, why did they call for all of them?
No, because they were, like, outside playing together. They were, like, neighborhood kids.
So they're always seen together,
I guess, yeah, they're always seen together, so the parents of all of them know each other. So it was just, like, y'all come home. Maybe they had dinner planned, like, you know. But they were, like, neighborhood kids. They were always together.
I just feel like that wasn't my life. If
At all.
I went missing, you call my mother, and then she will call the police for me.
Exactly.
That one person called for everybody, sure.
Yeah, basically. So authorities, friends, and neighbors searched all night on May 5th and into the next day, retracing the area where the boys were last seen, but there was no sign of the missing boys. At around 1:45 p.m. the next day, on May 6th, a juvenile parole officer saw that what looked like a young boy's shoe floating in a creek around the Robin Hood Hills area. The creek was searched, and the body of all 3 boys were found. The boys had been stripped naked, hog-tied with their own shoelaces. Their clothing was found turned inside out, floating in the creek, and underwear from 2 of the boys was never recovered.
Okay.
Christopher Byers, in particular, had lacerations to various parts of his body and a mutilation to his genitals. Autopsies revealed that Byers had died of blood loss, while Michael Moore and Steve Branch had died of multiple injuries and drowning. I'm assuming that what they mean by multiple injuries is like beatings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The mutilation of Byers' genitals caused investigators to believe that some kind of cult ritual was performed on the boys and that Christopher Byers, for some reason, was singled out. Mm-hmm. Word that the murders were that of a satanic cult spread like wildfire around the small town of West Memphis. And this is in Arkansas, not Memphis, Tennessee, as we assumed.
When Maya first told me about this case, I totally thought Memphis, Tennessee, and I was thinking of like 3 6 Mafia for the opening.
I was thinking
music.
ribs.
Well, I still might throw some 3 6 Mafia for the intro music. You guys will find out.
So this is a small town of West Memphis, Arkansas, and I have to like sound it out when I say Arkansas because I automatically want to say Arkansas. Because what the fuck, English? What the fuck is this? How do you have Kansas and Arkansas? Shouldn't it be Kansas?
Look, it looked like Arkansas to me.
So I'm gonna say Arkansas.
Y'all know.
So the people of West Memphis, as well as the investigators, quickly turned their interest to Jesse Miskelly, who was 17, Jason Baldwin, who was 16, and Damian Eccles, who was 18. Now, Eccles and Baldwin were friends from school. They listened to heavy metal, they have long hair, they wore all black, and in a small evangelical town, they were, like, pointed out as freaks and, like, devils and criminals and all that just because they wore all black, and they listened to different music than everyone else did.
I mean, they sound cool to me.
Eccles and Baldwin were close friends, while they weren't very well acquainted with Miss Kelly. They just happened to go to, like, the same school at one point. They were all around kind of the same age, so I guess they all just like grouped them all together. So Jason Baldwin and Damian Eccles shared a known distaste for the cultural climate of West Memphis, which was a politically conservative, strongly evangelical town. Mm-hmm. Damian Eccles had a criminal history. He had like trespassing charges and theft, which isn't that severe. He had also spent time in a mental institution as a teen after police had heard rumors that him and his girlfriend wanted to have a baby and use it as sacrifice, which was bullshit, but we'll get to that.
Why is this tale so extreme?
Exactly. He was diagnosed as depressed and suicidal, which living in a town like that,
yeah,
and being different, quote
he
unquote.
wasn't even different. He was just intelligent.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
I would be a little depressed too if I was surrounded by a bunch of idiots.
Dumbasses, exactly. So Eccles was quickly brought in for questioning. He was submitted to a polygraph test, which investigators claimed indicated deception. But when they were asked to produce the records of that examination, it was discovered that there was no written record, and they were just pulling it out of their ass, basically.
Okay, wait 1 second here. So I don't know if I missed something, but how did the police know to go after these boys?
So basically, like, when I mentioned a couple minutes ago, I did miss something, sorry. So, like, that juvenile parole officer that found that floating shoe at the crime scene, he apparently had a past with Eccles, or he knew about Eccles's, like, criminal past and, like, his stay at, like, a mental institution. So basically, and, like, the fact that everyone in town thought that just because he wore all black, he was, like, satanic and evil and a freak. So basically, when he finds the shoe and then they find the bodies, he says out loud to everyone around him, looks like Damien Eccles finally killed someone. And then that's where all the rumors start, and it, like, goes like wildfire around the whole town. And they assume that, like, because Eccles had something to do with it, according to them, then Baldwin, who was his friend, had something to do with it. And then Miss Kelly, who, like, somehow was involved with him,
Probably
also had
he
something.
dressed similar to them or something like that.
Or, like, at one point, maybe they saw him going into a store together, and they just assumed that all these kids had something to do with it. So they just, like, grouped them all together and were like, yeah, these three are our point of interest.
So all this is just off of hearsay, basically.
And they're just assuming. And you know what they say about assuming.
Yep.
It makes an ass out of you and me. Okay, so 4 days after the discovery of the boys' bodies on May 10th, 1993, the police questioned Eccles yet again. And at this point, he had become, like, their main focus. Like, they just kept questioning him over and over and over and over again, even though they weren't like, oh, no, he's not a main suspect. Like, he's just, like, a fountain of information. He's just giving us information, when really this kid was not giving any information.
Gotcha.
So they asked and most likely coerced him into describing how he thought the boys had died. So it wasn't even like, what did you do then? It was like, well, let's say you were going to kill these kids, or you knew someone who was going to kill these kids. How do you think it would happen?
It's kind of like OJ with the if I would have done it kind of thing. But I think he really did it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Completely different, but kind of the same thing. So Eccles would say that the boys probably died of mutilation. Some guy cut up the bodies. He had heard that they were in the water and that maybe one of them had drowned or something like that. He also said that one was more cut up than others, that maybe the purpose of killing them was to scare someone, and the killer would probably work alone for fear of an accomplice, like, snitching on him. Mm-hmm. So investigators immediately assumed Eccles had been involved, because in order for him to know about the details, he would have to be a part of it, because according to the police, no one in the public would know. But turns out that John Mark Byers, which was Christopher's adoptive father, had talked to reporters just minutes after the bodies were found, and told the reporters that the investigators on the scene had told him that two of the boys had been badly beaten, and that the third had suffered a worse beating, and that one of them was mutilated.
Okay.
So it wasn't like this guy, Eccles, just, like, pulled information out of his ass, or, like, he was actually there. No, everyone in town basically knew, because this guy, John Mark Byers, who we'll get to in a second, was, like, talking out his ass and just telling everybody what, like, this investigator told him.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't like they had secured the scene, or, like, information wasn't being given out. Mm-hmm. So 1 month later, there was still no progress in the case because there was no real evidence. It was just, like, them assuming, hearsay, all of that. On June 3rd, police interrogated 17-year-old Jesse Miskelly Jr. He was a high school dropout and had an IQ of 72, which made him borderline mentally retarded. He was interrogated alone, without his parents' permission, and he was questioned for nearly 12 hours. of which only 46 minutes were recorded.
So what? Yeah, we don't know what was said.
We don't know what was
previously.
said. We don't know what threats were given to him. Like, we're assuming, I'm not even assuming, I know that those 46 minutes were just him basically being coerced and fed a confession. Exactly. Yeah. Jesse would go on to confess involvement in the case, stating he watched Eccles and Jason Baldwin brutalize the victims with a club and a knife, and he also said that the Baldwin and Eccles had taken turns raping one of the boys and mutilating another as a part of a cult ritual. Mm-hmm. Jesse quickly recanted his confession, citing intimidation, coercion, fatigue, and threats from the police. Police arrested Eccles and Baldwin after Miskelly's confession, and on February 5th, 1994, Jesse Miskelly Jr. was convicted of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life plus 40 years in prison. On March 19th, 1994, Eccles and Baldwin were found guilty on 3 counts of murder. Eccles was sentenced to death and Baldwin to life in prison. So Eccles was the only one sentenced to life. Because they assumed that he was like the ringleader or whatever.
To death.
To death, yeah, sorry. Because he did look different than anyone else. He had naturally like black hair, like pitch black hair, and he was very fair. Mm-hmm. He kind of did look like a vampire, if you would tell me. He looked like a young Johnny Depp.
And pudgier. Yeah,
and Johnny Depp had that like kind of mysterious look to him.
Yep.
So now we're going to get into the investigation, criticism, and how it led to the release of the West Memphis Three. Now, this part may be kind of confusing or a mess and out of order, but deal with it. So the bodies of the boys had been removed from the water before the coroner arrived to examine the scene and determine the state of rigor mortis. So the kids were in a creek. And when they show, like, on this documentary, they're, like, on the, what is it?
The bank?
The bank of the creek. They were outside of the water, basically. So this allowed the bodies to decay on the creek bank and to be exposed to sunlight and insects. The police did not call the coroner until almost 2 hours after the discovery of the floating shoe, and therefore the bodies. Resulting in a late appearance by the coroner, officials failed to drain the creek in a timely manner and secure possible evidence in the water. The creek wasn't sandbagged after the bodies were pulled from the water. So there was like water just moving at all times.
Could have carried evidence.
And everything like that. So they just fucked up that whole crime scene. Police records were also a mess. To call them disorderly would be putting it mildly, said one investigator. It was speculated that the small police force was overwhelmed by the crime, but they refused help that was offered from the violent crimes experts at the Arkansas State Police. Who knows why? But, like, if you can't deal with it, why wouldn't you want help? I'm just saying.
Too much like right.
Ask for help.
I like what you did there with that accent. Showing your authority.
Some of the physical evidence was stored in paper sacks obtained from a supermarket.
Paper sacks, though? And a supermarket? It probably had all kinds.
With the supermarket's name still printed on the bags.
I thought evidence was held in plastic.
Exactly. It's supposed to be held in, like, sterilized, like, boxes or plastic bags or something.
So it doesn't get contaminated.
It's like, basically, you just pull up with a bunch of shoppers, like, plastic bags, and you're just like, yeah, just put all this in.
Probably got all kind of chicken juice and all kinds of shit on.
Exactly. And who knows whose home these, like, bags came from.
They came out somebody's drawer where they keep all their plastic bags.
Just like me.
The bags inside of one bag.
Yep. Who knows how old those bags were, too.
Mm-hmm.
So things start to unravel quickly. Remember the genital mutilation on Chris Byers' knee?
Yes, I remember vividly.
Because we saw it. It was, in fact, not done by a human, as it was suspected of at first. So they thought that, like, someone had cut off his, like, whole...
Man, they showed the pictures on the documentary. It was so graphic. It almost looked like a vagina because of the way they cut it off.
But you know it's not. And it was so disgusting. It was a little boy.
I know. I felt so bad.
Happy thoughts. Happy place. Let's go.
Yes.
Okay. So it was actually not done by a human or a knife. It was caused by animals gnawing on the soft tissues after he died. Bruises and gashes in the boys' mouths, which was first interpreted as evidence of forced oral sex were also caused by animals. Though there were strange punctures on the skin that looked like knife-inflicted torture, it was actually animals nibbling and chewing on the body. There was like a huge bloodied patch on the left side of Stevie Branch's face, which was that you said looked like a bite mark. Mm-hmm. That was also animal damage.
Oh.
The boys were left in a creek in the woods overnight. So there was countless animals like snapping turtles, possums, foxes, raccoons, squirrels, stray dogs, and the occasional coyote in that area. So they would have all come into contact or could have come into contact with the bodies and done some damage to it.
Right.
So it wasn't, I guess, it wasn't as severe as they made it to look. Mm-hmm. The kids still suffer, but it wasn't like some sort of, the way that they stated it when they first, it was like they were brutally raped and that they were tortured for hours and all that, and it's coming out that it wasn't like that. There was also,
that throughout this documentaries that we watched, that this town exaggerated a lot of things.
A lot.
It's almost like they projected their own personal beliefs on everything and expected the whole town to believe the same thing and act the same way.
Exactly. And if you watch this John Mark Byers dude, the adoptive father of Chris Byers, he comes out at one point and is like, they skinned one of them alive. They bashed in another kid's head, beyond recognition. It's like none of that happened. We saw it. We saw several times over and over again. The kids, they did have bruises and cuts and all that, but it wasn't beyond recognition.
Yeah.
And these people just they saw one too many movies. There was also virtually no blood at the scene of where the bodies were found. Had Christopher Byers bled to death, like it was said that he did, there would have been a ton of blood at the scene. So even if it were washed away, there would have still been remnants of the blood, as we know.
Okay.
So what we're assuming is that they were killed somewhere else.
And then
dumped there. Witnesses who had come up during the years and months leading up to the trial and that made up a lot of the timelines later recounted, stating police harassed and threatened them into testifying. Years after the initial trial in 1999 and after the first Paradise Lost documentary aired in 1996, a fresh pair of eyes who was working for the defense discovered a human bite mark on one of the kids' foreheads. Experts would confirm that the bite mark belonged to that of a human, and coincidentally enough, this character, John Mark Byers, who was Christopher Byers' adoptive father, had removed his teeth in 1997 and now sported new dentures.
That looked just like his old teeth.
Thank you. So he would give multiple accounts as to why he removed them, stating at one time that he lost them in a fight, and then another time that he suffered from periodontal disease, and then another one that he just wanted it to look better for aesthetic reasons. But it's he would always be caught up in a lie as to why he removed it.
Yeah, he blamed the periodontal, did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Periodontal disease on a type of medication
he was on, but it turned out that the medication he was on, that wasn't one of the side effects.
Yep.
And at one point, I think one of his friends was was saying, yeah, we were there. I think they were together. They said that they were together when they knocked his teeth out or something like that. And the guy was like, yeah, I was there. And it's nah, but it's a lie.
Maybe they was all drunk. Or all on the same medication.
That cause periodontal diseases
in the brain.
So this guy, John Mark Byers, also gave Paradise Lost documentarians a pocket knife as a gift when they were filming that first 1996 documentary. They quickly realized that there was dried blood on the knife. They gave the knife to police, and it was then sent for testing. When the test results came back, the blood on the knife was determined to be the same type of blood that belonged to John Mark Byers as well as Christopher Byers. I'm guessing that DNA wasn't readily available to them, so they could just do blood type testing. Mm-hmm. But what a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
And he had stated when he had given it to him that he had never used the knife, that it was a brand new knife. So why is there blood on it if you've never used it? So when they questioned him, like afterward, and they realize that there is blood on it. He's like, yeah, well, I guess, yeah, I remember I was hunting one day and I nicked my hand or something like that, and that's why there got blood on it. But then they ask him again. He's like, no, like I never nicked myself. Like I don't know where that story came from. There should be no reason why there's blood on it or anything. So it's like now you're contradicting yourself.
Right.
And had y'all seen this dude on the documentary? This guy is so fucking loud for no reason.
He would put on a show. It was almost like he would put, when he knew they were recording, he would pull up in a costume, looking like something from an old Western or like the Beverly Hillbillies,
reciting biblical terms,
singing and shit.
Exactly, and it's like changing crazy outfits all the damn time, changing his looks and all that. But then as soon as he becomes like the spotlight of the investigation for this short minute, all of a sudden he's like a completely different person. He's quiet, he's timid, he's not saying anything like out of context, he's answering questions and acting all like super innocent, where it's like, all right, who are you trying to fool now?
But at one point he got bucked with the reporter or whoever that was interviewing him, and he pulled out his teeth. That was so disgusting.
He pulls out his teeth multiple times. Yes. Multiple times. Like these documentaries are so disturbing.
Gross.
And yeah.
I never want to see anybody pull out their teeth.
Oh my God. Please, I didn't want to remember that. Okay. So one of the things that I wrote down here is like, let's assuming and knowing that John Mark Byers knew that there was blood on that knife, why would he give it to those documentarians? Like, what was his game there? Was it part of like his sick plan?
Was he gonna try to frame somebody else and he failed?
Or was he trying to get rid of... he's probably so stupid. He thought, I'm gonna just give it to them. They won't know. And then they can't trace it back to me.
Right.
Maybe I'm giving him too much credit because I was like, well, what if it's like one of those trophy things? And what if it's like him trying to feel superior? But I don't think he's smart enough for that shit.
Nope.
I'm pretty sure his IQ is like 2. All right, so Christopher Byers' mom, so this guy's wife, would end up dying a couple years later. Her death was ruled to be undetermined, and I guess it was still open up until the last documentary in 2011. So no one really knows how she died. There's like rumors of it being asphyxiation, overdose. But this guy just like puts on this whole show at her grave talking about we were best friends and you died next to me and da-da-da-da-da.
They started talking about their cats and dogs.
And it's just like, boy, they're crocodile tears. Like, he's like sobbing with no tears coming out.
It falls to his knees.
Oh my God, so dramatic.
But they did say that she had a cocktail of drugs in her system.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true. But wouldn't they have ruled it an overdose had it been that?
This is true.
Exactly. So we're going into another key piece here. So in 2007, a single hair was found entwined in the shoelaces used to tie up one of the boys was tested for DNA. The DNA of the hair matched that of Terry Hobbs, which was Stevie Branch's stepfather, Stevie Branch being one of the victims. Now, Terry Hobbs had no alibi for the 2.5 hours, the window where the kids would have been killed, which was like from 6:30 to 9 or like 6 to 8:30 p.m. on May 5th, I want to say, when they disappeared. Yeah, May 5th, when they disappeared. So this guy has no alibi. He claimed that he hadn't talked to Stevie that day. He hadn't seen him, but then neighbors came out and said, no, he was outside talking to them. Like, he was laughing with them. He was playing with them for a little bit. So, like, why would you lie? Like, why are you lying now all of a sudden when they're saying that your DNA is on this?
Right. What is there to cover up?
Exactly. So due to that DNA that was found in 2007, everyone starts, so like Eccles, Baldwin, Miss Kelly, they start like appealing. At this point, after all these Paradise Lost documentaries come out, the public is like in uproar as to why these innocent, because they're clearly innocent. Mm-hmm. Like, these guys have nothing to do with it. The confessions were coerced. There's no physical evidence. There was DNA that was found on the scene, and none of it matched any of the 3 boys. So it's like there's no physical evidence tying him to it.
Then they match their dental impressions to that
bite suspected bite mark, and it didn't match. So it's like there's nothing keeping them in jail except for the fact that this town thinks that they're diabolical or something like that, or they don't want to see beyond reality and just want to assume that these kids, since they're in jail, I guess they're guilty. So after weeks of negotiations, well, months, I guess, of negotiations, in August 19th of 2011. Eccles, Baldwin, and Miss Kelly were released from prison as part of a plea deal, making the hearings ordered by Arkansas Supreme Court unnecessary. So Arkansas Supreme Court kept denying their appeals.
Right.
Like the judge that was on the case was also handling their original case, was also handling their appeals, which I feel like that shouldn't be right. And I don't know if that's illegal or whatever. But basically, like, he kept denying their appeals, and then the Supreme Court kind of, like, threw that guy off the case, and then this is how they get to enter their plea deal. The three entered into an unusual Alford plea deal, which basically, according to the law, they're still guilty up until this day, but they're allowed to go free.
Oh, I didn't know that part because we cut the documentary short. So I'm happy they got out. I mean, because I don't feel, needless to say, based on our reactions to this whole thing, I didn't feel they were guilty.
No, not at all. So they have to legally plead guilty, but they're still able to assert their innocence, if that makes sense. Not really.
Not really.
It don't make no sense, but.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, law people, but wouldn't it be like, kind of, they couldn't retrial them because that would be considered like double jeopardy. Yeah, so I guess that's like a loophole.
But then, if they don't give them a second trial, I guess they would have to dismiss the charges altogether and then give them a second trial, or a second trial with new charge. I don't know how the law works. Please help us out. But I feel like this isn't fair because, like, anyone can go back in their record and see that they're guilty of, like, first-degree murder of 3 little kids. I don't know. It's not true.
Right. Like, how would they live their lives exactly.
And up until 2011, they had served 18 years in prison. Yeah. And one of them, Damian Eccles, was raped repeatedly the first year he was in jail.
Yeah. And he sued, the courts? For that?
I feel like the court. No, it was like the people working at the jail because they didn't do anything about it.
Oh yeah, because they said they allowed them.
So imagine these guys, but let's not forget here. There's still 3 little 8-year-old boys who were murdered that day, and it's still unsolved. Even though I feel like it was that not Miss Kelly. I feel like it was Terry Hobbs and John Mark Byers together.
The 2 step pipers.
Yep. And I actually read, like, on one hidden article on an unknown website, whatever, that one of the theories is that Terry Hobbs and John Mark Byers were actually, like, selling drugs or doing drugs together or buying drugs from somebody. The kids were in the woods where they were doing the drug transaction. They see it. These guys freak out and start and, like, kill them, basically. That's one of the theories.
But why kill the kids just because they saw you do drugs?
Because both of them had criminal records. But yeah, there's just so many questions to this case.
There's ways you can tell kids not, there's ways you can tell kids not to snitch without killing them.
But these people were not right in the head.
Right.
As we can tell by the documentary.
Did we touch on the fact that they definitely were not sexually assaulted? That was the original thought, but it came out that they weren't.
Yeah, I don't think we touched on it, but yeah. So I guess when these rumors start, like, they said that they were raped and that they were like that one kid was mutilated and it was like sexual in nature, but it definitely wasn't. When not even the first coroner, because the first coroner apparently sucked while doing the autopsies, but it was like in the later years when another one takes a look. So it turns out that, now we're going to get into graphic detail here. If you don't like hearing about this, go ahead, skip like 2 minutes and then come back. So it turns out that the kids had dilated anuses. Mm-hmm. And that was due to rigor mortis, as well as being in the creek for some time, which caused it to dilate. So there was no actual sign of penetration. There was like scars and like lacerations inside the mouth of some of them that turns out to be from animals as well.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And as we said before, the mutilation to the genitals was done by an animal and not by a human. But I did see on one article, but I didn't see it anywhere else. And again, I don't know how true this is. There were traces of semen on one of the boys' clothing. The DNA apparently was similar to that of Terry Hobbs. Ooh. But I didn't see it anywhere else. But I feel like these two have something to do with it. And no, this is too problematic to say. Never mind.
Okay, we're skipping the problematic report today.
Do you want to hear it? I just don't want to get anyone angry.
What are you talking about, lady, if you don't want to talk about it right now?
They weren't the biological fathers.
Yeah, I knew that.
So it's like, I don't know. I just have this
yeah, because it is true that you got to be careful who you bring around your children.
Exactly.
Because not everybody knows how to be a good step-parent. Some people get involved with mothers for alternative motives.
Exactly.
So that is a point there.
That's where I was going with that.
I mean, that wasn't that problematic. It's the truth.
This is true. All right. And that wasn't problematic. That's my theory. These two guys have something to do with it.
I do think they had something to do with it because both of them had too much to hide. And the one with the teeth, it just seemed like he popped up everywhere almost to like draw attention to himself, but not at the same time.
It was like draw attention to himself in like, look, I didn't do it. I have nothing to do with it. If I had something to do with it, I'd be hiding, but I'm right here. So don't look at me. But look at me right. So that you know that I didn't do it.
Right.
But if you're looking at me because I did it, I didn't do it.
Right.
It was like, like if you watch it, it's just like.
It's hilarious. Like the way he acted. The way he acts.
Exactly. And also like Terry Hobbs, which is, what is it? Stevie Branch's stepfather.
Yeah.
So his wife, Stevie Branch's mom, God, I got so confused right there. She looks very weird at points in this documentary.
Oh yeah, when they first interviewed her and she was like playing around with this scarf and putting it on her head.
The Boy Scout scarf that Stevie wore. And it's like, okay, I understand, like, what is it called?
Being in shock. Being
in shock. What's the other word? Being when someone dies. You're in mourning. Being like
everybody
people
mourn
differently. I understand that. But this lady was out here laughing. It looked like she was on cloud 2004. It looked like she was on some type of drugs or something like that. She just did not look like everyone else did in the documentary.
Yeah, and it also came out when you'll see in the documentary when they were interviewing the stepdad that apparently she cheated on him right before the boys went missing.
Exactly. And it's like, yeah.
And he had to emphasize that the man was Mexican.
So we know he's racist. But that's for another day. Yeah, which is like, obviously, if you want to hurt someone, you're going to hurt them, and you're like a sick motherfucker, you're going to hurt them with their child, who is not your son. So you wouldn't really feel that bad about hurting.
Nope, because you have no attachment to him.
Exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess this case is, I mean, it's still an unsolved case, because these guys didn't do it, so who did it? Will we know? Are there any updates?
Yes, if you guys know any updates on this case, please let us know.
And if we missed anything, don't kill us. Understand that we are busy.
All right. So
I'm gonna get some water.
On to that might probably still pick that up.
Well, I'm gonna get some water then.
So on to my case. I am taking you guys to New Orleans with all the bounce music and everything else.
We were supposed to get beignets.
Oh yeah, shit. Oops. Well, we can save that for later.
And crawfish.
Ooh. Some etouffee.
That was the chair, not me.
It's some etouffee and some jambalaya and gumbo.
Yes.
Oh. All right. Anyway, guys. So in New Orleans, this took place between 1991 and 97. And this is the case of Russell Elwood, the taxi driver.
Ooh. Kill him. Oh my God.
Kill him.
I did not mean to do that.
So it was said that he had between 15 and 26 victims. His MO was to target sex workers. Most of them were of African American descent.
Was this guy?
And many of them were transgendered.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. He would inject his victims with a lethal mixture of drugs, then have sex with them with their near lifeless bodies.
Oh, necrophiliac.
Well, they weren't dead.
But nearly dead.
Yeah. Before dumping them in swampy areas around New Orleans.
Oh, shit.
The cause of death of most of his victims was usually strangulation, suffocation, or drowning because, they were dumped in water, which is in common between our two cases. Okay, so we're going to go into his childhood and the life before the murders.
Nice.
There really wasn't much information that I found on his childhood. I mean, they couldn't even really confirm where he was born.
What?
Yeah, it's weird. It was assumed that he was born in Massillon, Ohio in 1951.
Ooh.
He was said to have served time in both Ohio and Florida for drug charges and probation violations.
Damn.
He moved to New Orleans for a new start, but was soon arrested on traffic violations. This man's been arrested a lot of times, you'll see. He began work as a freelance photographer, but quit for unspecified reasons. He's probably murking his clients. And later became a taxi driver. He also lived in a boarding home, but when he couldn't afford the fees for the boarding home, he would live out of his car. And at one point, he inherited $15,000 from his mom when she passed away. But he lost all of it to penny stocks. Because, gambling was what you do as soon as you win some monies. So let's get into his crimes. Russell was said to have killed as many as 26 women, but only 2 was confirmed by authorities. This was because, check this out, there was another serial killer active at the same exact time by the name of Victor Gant.
Was it a similar MO?
Yes, and he was a former police officer.
Ho, what?
We might have to get into that one another day. Okay? His first confirmed victim was Cheryl Lewis. After drugging and raping her, she was drowned in a canal and was dumped naked along Highway 3160 in Hineville, Louisiana. This was said to happen between February 1st and February 3rd of 93.
Damn.
93
again?
Yeah.
Damn.
Fingerprints were used to identify her body. Okay. Lewis was reported missing on February 2nd by her mother, Lillian. She was last seen leaving her home on foot, headed to a convenience store. And when she passed, she left behind 4 children. And family members said that she was not a prostitute. And she actually worked
sex worker, Nia.
Well, these are the words they use in all the documents, okay? Sheesh. They also used a rather problematic word for transgender people, too, but I decided not to use it, okay? So basically...
You don't want that smoke today?
Nope, no smoke. So she had actually worked as a nurse. She was a nurse and not a sex worker.
Oh.
His second confirmed victim was Dolores Max, a transgendered woman who was also drugged and raped, but she succumbed to strangulation. Both bodies were found a day apart on February 21st and February 22nd. A year later, Elwood, or Russell, whatever name you want to call him by, returned to the crime scene of Cheryl Lewis in the middle of the night, partially undressed. He was spotted by 2 off-duty St. Charles Parish deputies, and this is in Louisiana, not St. Charles, Maryland.
Close enough.
Right. Claiming that he was trying to change the oil of his taxi in a location where no one could see him dumping the oil. But the deputies didn't find any evidence of oil changing, but eventually let him go.
Okay.
Right. So let's move on to his arrests and convictions. Now, you will see through this whole section, this man gets arrested a whole heck of a lot of times. So, even though they let him go, This incident aided in his arrest 2 years later in 1997. This was 2 years after a task force with the FBI was formed to investigate the string of murders where Russell was classified a suspect. He was found in Sebring, Florida by Colonel Walter T. Gorman and other members of the task force. He was said to have been cooperative and told them that he had a dream about the moment he would be interrogated by a serial killer task force.
Excuse me?
He's a little bit loony. One of Russell's cellmates from a Florida jail confirmed to investigators that he once told him that he enjoyed having sex with drug people who were unable to control their bodies.
Excuse me?
According to the statement, Russell said that if they were high on cocaine or heroin, the heroin would put them in a state of mind as if they were paralyzed, and he could take advantage of their bodies.
Oh my God.
He also told the inmate that he sold drugs out of his taxi and would mix different drugs and got off watching their eyes roll to the back of their heads.
I mean, you could just hit it right and get that done.
This is true.
I mean, you didn't have to do all that.
Right.
Jesus.
He said when they wouldn't wake up and were not breathing, he would put them out of the cab. So he would do all these things to them while in his car, and then when they, I guess, eventually died, he would throw them out.
Holy fuck.
So even after all of this, he was still released and cleared of any involvement.
What? Like, you wouldn't even be like, yeah, you know what? We can't let you out.
I want to look at this a little bit more.
Like, make up some charges. Y'all are good at that.
Well, I mean, I guess in this case, they were not trying to listen to hearsay, unlike the other. Yeah.
Is it hearsay? But it's him telling it, isn't it?
No, this is all things that the inmate said that was told to him.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Never mind.
On August 4th of 97, he was arrested on drug charges, cocaine, and was sentenced to 85 days in jail. I thought you got way more than that for coke.
Wasn't that the 90s, though?
I mean, he had crack, so, you know, because there's a huge difference between the two. So, while locked up, he had bragged to inmates about the murders he committed in Louisiana.
Again?
Yeah.
He didn't learn the first time?
He'd just be running his mouth. Oh, he was soon placed on probation and moved to Canton, Ohio to work for his brother. While in Ohio, the task force contacted him again to conduct another interview while he was serving time for violating his probation for previous drug charges.
Oh my gosh.
So he just keeps getting locked up.
Fuck.
This time, he confessed to dumping a body of a black female in some water on the side of a rural road. The details he provided the team was eerily similar to the disposal of Cheryl Lewis's body. He was quoted saying, "I am willing to say I met a black female. I put her in the back seat. That's where all my fares went. And that I took her out to St. Charles, where I was later stopped. And I put her body in the water. I'm willing to give you that."
What?
Yeah, it doesn't mean. He also said, "I'm willing to go back to Louisiana for those 2 overdose cases. I had a black prostitute in the front of my car, and I IV'd them. I can't incriminate myself any more than I've already done."
What?
I'm assuming when he said he IV'd them, he probably injected them or something, yeah. So he never admitted to killing specific people, but instead said things like homicides I've committed and black women I've killed.
Oh, he thought that would like help him or something like that?
You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God. He watched too much CSI or some shit.
He also never named specific victims of locations, but even without that information, Russell was arrested by indictment on March 23rd of 98 with 2 violations of second-degree murder.
Jesus.
Approximately 1 year later, on March 2nd, 1999, the state entered a Noel Prosecchi? I don't know how to pronounce this. Basically,
Santa Claus?
It's something.
Noel?
But basically, it just means that they will no longer prosecute, or it was like a dismiss. So they basically dismissed one count of the indictment regarding Dolores Mack, the second confirmed person.
The transgender?
Yes. Mm-hmm. As it was revealed that he was in Ohio at the time of the murder. He hoped he hoped that the second charge would be dropped, but it wasn't.
The nurse? Was that the nurse?
Yeah. So a 3-day trial began on June 8th of 1999, which concluded in a unanimous jury finding that the defendant was guilty as charged. During his trial, several inmates that served time with Russell testified against him. One inmate, Stan Hill, testified that he told him that he killed a sex worker in Seabrook, Florida, where he was arrested on, drug charges the previous summer. Yeah. He said that Russell told him he would take prostitutes to remote areas, overdose them, choke them, then drag them out of his taxi naked. These details closely match an unsolved murder from Florida. When a recording of this statement was played back to Russell, it was said that he responded, "Yep, yes, right."
So this dude was just like out here, just like talking out his ass to everybody.
Pretty much. He wanted everybody to know what he was doing.
Everyone was like fed the fuck up. Like, look, I am sick and tired of hearing about this dude killing these women.
Right. So a sex worker was said to have testified as well, saying that she sold drugs to Russell, which I'm kind of confused. If he sold drugs, why was he buying drugs from her? But whatever.
I guess maybe he was buying drugs from her to sell.
Possibly. And she got in his car, to make the transaction. She said he became very angry with her at one point, saying things like, "You know what I do to bitches like you? I kill them."
Excuse me?
Right. On August 17th of 1999...
right before my birthday again!
You're a jinx, bro. So Russell was sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labor without benefit of parole, probation, or suspension. Yeah, suspension of sentence. Russell filed a timely motion of appeal, which was granted by the trial court.
Excuse me?
Yep.
How? Like, you out here talking out your ass.
Because, well, I'm going to touch on that, but basically his attorney was trying to say that he wasn't guilty. So I guess Russell was trying to say he wasn't guilty, even though he was telling everybody his business.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The indictment was also amended to so it was the indictment was amended to allege that Cheryl Lewis was murdered on or between January 31st, 93 and February 9th, 1993. So basically they were trying to say it was a wider time frame than what they previously thought. With his attorney present, Russell was arraigned on the amended indictment on April 9th, 1998. At that time, Russell pled not guilty to the charge of second-degree murder of Cheryl Lewis.
Good Lord.
Yeah. In several interviews with the Times Picayune, Picayoune.
I don't know what the
right?
fuck that is.
I need to stop picking cases with words I can't pronounce.
What is that?
It's a paper that came out in New Orleans. Russell insisted that he never killed anyone. His attorney, Ross, I'm going to say S because I can't pronounce his last name either, claimed that the case against him was flimsy, claiming that his client was booked with murder based on old evidence that has always been unsatisfactory.
So why was your boy out here saying he killed everybody?
Precisely. He was quoted saying, "There's nothing new that I know of, and there are no forensics that I know of. They're attempting to convict him on statements taken completely out of context. It's infuriating. I'm quite taken aback by the way they're trying to manipulate this case. They're trying to justify a long, fruitless investigation."
These defense attorneys need like an Oscar sometimes, because good Lord.
Right. So it's unclear if any of the other victims were investigated. any further, but I would assume not, because the task force was eventually dissolved after the FBI cut ties and began investigating one of the sheriff department who was accused of hiding or destroying evidence to help convict Russell.
Holy shit.
I'm assuming these accusations came from the attorney.
Oh, and not... Oh, okay.
Because I'm saying this only because, and this is my thoughts, but only because there's so much other evidence pointing at him.
Is there physical evidence, though? Did I miss that?
No. There's no physical evidence.
So it's just kind of... Yeah. It's kind of circumstantial.
Yes, it is.
Fuck. Well, there's no physical evidence.
Nope. I did not see any physical evidence anywhere. Any mention in any of the places that I researched.
I wonder if this was a case of a fucked up crime scene, or was this dude just, because he raped them, strangled them, and injected them with drugs, and there's no physical evidence? Like, to inject someone, you have to hold their arm.
Yeah. But
to strangle them, you have to, like, that's so weird.
It is weird. Unless I missed something through my research.
Or they fucked it up.
Yeah, I didn't find any information stating that there was physical evidence found. So I do have two afters for this one. One being, this one's kind of interesting, and I'm so blown because I forgot to listen to the recordings from this. Basically, some people believe that Russell was the infamous Clay the serial killer that called the Howard Stern show in 1997. You know who Howard Stern is?
No.
He's like a shock jock or whatever.
What's that?
Like, he just says wild shit on his show. And he used to have, like, porn stars and all kinds of stuff. Nah.
Oh, okay.
At least, I don't know. Should I say? I never listened to it. Because it was more popular when, like, back then. Like, before I was, listening to things.
Damn, there was a serial killer that called in?
So... He claimed, so the serial killer called in, and this recording is on YouTube, and I meant to listen to them, right? But he claimed to have killed 12 sex workers in New Orleans. He went into grave detail about the graphic murders and gave information that was unknown to the public.
Holy shit.
He was said to be unemotional while describing how he raped and killed the women. And the FBI contacted Howard Stern the next day requesting the tapes. What? The tapes of the recorded call. Yeah.
Damn.
So what I did read, because it's also on Reddit too, like you can read about it. What I did read was the guy Clay who called in claimed that he killed the women with a hammer, but there was no evidence of like blunt force trauma or anything like that on any of the bodies. So that's where the story kind of differentiates. But a lot of people think this is the same person.
Damn.
This case was also mentioned on an episode of Criminal Minds.
Ooh.
Yeah.
My favorite show.
So it wasn't directly mentioned, but it was referenced by the character Reed. It was an episode that aired in 2006 called The Last Word. The team talked about instances where two serial killers were active at the same time, and they referenced New Orleans. And again, the other killer was Victor Gant. So those are like the cool afters.
I forgot the part, like the fact that they were sex workers. So even if there was physical evidence, maybe it was like other physical evidence.
Yeah, they probably just thought it was part of the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Damn. Wait, so is he still in jail? Is he out, or did he get out?
I think he's still in jail
for those crimes.
That's what he got locked for.
But wasn't his appeal?
There is nothing else about him.
What?
Yeah. So one of the sources that I looked at, they tried to say there was nothing else, like even about his sentencing, but I actually found the court documents, so he was sentenced. But there's no other information about him anywhere. Like, this information I had was very limited anyway.
And it wasn't too long ago.
Nope.
Oh my God.
I find it weird because it's not the first case where, like, the person just falls off the side of the earth.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's not a good thing.
Like, how the hell does that happen?
I feel like they should, like, put chips in these people. Like they do dogs.
Experiment
Experiment
the chips with them. Oh, no.
Yeah, because I feel like...
I guess both of our cases are just kind of, like...
open-ended at this case. This time, yeah.
At least we know who did yours, but, like, mine is just... Well, I guess we kind of do know.
We think we know.
We think we know. Oh, we know.
So since both of these cases were both kind of open-ended, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Or any information
theories,
you find.
Anything. I like theories. Theories are fun.
Yes, they are.
All right, we're gonna go take a nap because I'm tired.
Yeah, we're full.
We got the itis. I like barely made it through this episode today.
You don't fall off that chair. All right, guys.
All right, as always, follow us on Instagram, Antisocial Murder Club. Find our Twitter, AS Murder Club.
We're on YouTube.
SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts.
Yes, and Instagram forces us to get to Facebook, so we're on there too.
Yeah, sure. I don't check Facebook.
We probably won't update it.
That's new.
But it's there. But yeah, so follow us on all of our platforms. Like and subscribe and all those ting day. And,
we'll see you next week. Hopefully, if we make it.
Yeah.
Meh.
Blessed be.
Under his eye.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.